Playing AD carry is super stressful. You have a support who doesn't know what day it is, the rest of your team is feeding, and even the best AD carries in the world have bad games and can't carry their inting teammates. What's up, GameLeaper? Oh, the cheers. And in today's video, we are going to be analyzing 2 games of T1's Gumayusi, who is one of the most elite ADCs, and in one of these games, Mr. Gumayusi does what lots of players in lower elos do. He runs it down. But in the other game, he crushes a Korean challenger bot lane, and we are here to reveal how he does it. Now, before we do, hit subscribe down below, and let's go. So in the inting game, Mr. Gumayusi is playing Aphelios, and before we get into any game, it's essential to determine the strength of the AD carry we are playing at level 1. This is going to shape where we position before the first wave gets to lane, and also how we play that first wave. So for a champion like Aphelios, who doesn't have an ability at level 1, or inning the enemy bot lane or trying to ambush them, these plays are off the table because you are for sure going to lose. This is why Mr. Gumayusi chills under his tower and only runs into lane once his minions are next to him. So that's where we position our champion, but shit, how do we play the first minion wave if we are weak? Well, no AD carry is weak in all areas of the game. In an all-in scenario for sure, Aphelios sucks at level 1, but in terms of poke and pressure, Aphelios is one of the best because of his Calibrim's range. This is why Mr. Gumayusi is auto-attacking the wave consistently to try secure the push. This is high priority. Now, what does the push mean? Simple. You have a surplus of minions. So by auto-attacking the enemy wave like Mr. Gumayusi, you give yourself a chance to win this level 1 battle. But what if you lose the push? We can clearly see in this game that the enemy Ashe and Zyra are pushing into Mr. Gumayusi, so not only do they have the minion advantage, but they will also hit level 2 off the second minion wave. This is perhaps the most important time in any bot lane because this power spike is the biggest in the game. You are doubling your cooldowns, and if you and your support focus your attention on one of your opponents, that's 4 cooldowns against just 1. But despite knowing this, Mr. Gumayusi makes a massive positional mistake. Instead of letting the wave push into him and staying safe, he decides to keep auto-attacking the minions with the enemy Zyra in this brush. By doing this, he opens himself up to Zyra's damage each time he auto-attacks the wave, and just because of this has to flash at the end of this sequence. I also just want to point out how good Zyra and Ashe's positioning is during this trade. Just before they hit level 2, they are on Mr. Gumayusi's side of the lane. This gives them a chance to do exactly what they did, and so many bot laners and lower elos when they hit level 2 will still be standing behind their ranged minions. Advantages as big as these have to be used, and we'll see this in this game. Mr. Gumayusi is playing Draven, and the first thing we do is establish how strong or weak Draven is at level 1. Well, with Halo Blades, he could be the strongest AD carry of them all, so looking for a fight even before the wave gets to lane is ideal. Even though he leashes his jungler in this game, look at where he runs. Every other player will run south from the tri-brush and then into lane, but not someone who is aware of their champion identity. And as you can see, this is against a Blitzcrank, the low elo nightmare. But it is worth asking and answering the question, how come he doesn't care? Well, the hook itself is the setup to the damage that follows it. But at level 1, when you're fighting a Blitzcrank away from the minions, what's the follow-up in this game? An Ashe W? And you can see even though Mr. Gumayusi gets pulled in, he immediately auto-attacks the Ashe as if to say, thanks for hooking me close to your AD carry, bro. This is all possible because of where Mr. Gumayusi is positioning his strong level 1 Draven. But after this play ends, we still have to manage the minion wave and take advantage of that huge level 1 win. So how do we do that? Well, positioning is key again, and standing beyond the enemy minion wave is going to zone the enemy bot lane off that wave. This denies gold and possible experience, and it might not result in a kill, but this creates a lead. So many players will run all the way back to the minion wave, allowing Ashe and Blitzcrank to potentially contest the wave and hit level 2 first. And you know what pretty much every other AD carry will do in this situation? Yes, they will auto-attack the minions non-stop like it's going out of fashion, a bit like pro guides. So in regards to the minion wave, when you have such a dominant level 1, you just simply last hit. You have the push secured, do not make it easier for the enemy champions. The more you auto-attack, the more you push, the further you have to run away from your tower, and the closer the wave gets to the enemy tower. Keep it near that Summoner's Rift equator for as long as possible. Oh, but jizz, that doesn't matter. You sure? This Ashe is still level 1, but all of a sudden, Mr. Gumayusi starts auto-attacking the wave. What a lunatic. He's not listening to me. Well, this is completely justified and necessary because his Nidalee is pinging to dive the enemy bot lane. You can't dive without the minion wave crashing under the enemy tower, so in these scenarios, go nuts on the wave and even ask for assistance so your support hits the wave as well. At the end of this, Mr. Gumayusi picks up 2 kills, and to be honest, it all happens just because of that level 1. Nidalee being here is just icing on the cake, so I don't want to see any jungle diff in the comments. I know what you guys are like. Now, speaking of jungle diff, let's go back to the Aphelios game, and after running it down level 1, Mr. Gumayusi's Graze is ganking. Woo! But does this mean you can just headbutt the enemy bot lane because it's a 3v2? No, we still have to position accordingly, and this revolves around our own cooldowns and the enemy cooldowns. Look in the bottom left. No flash, no cleanse. So if we get hit by a Zyra snare, which he still has, we die. So it might look whack when Mr. Gumayusi runs backwards for a second, but it makes complete sense. He stays out of range of the Ashe as the gank is taking place, just in case Zyra aims for him, and they get the kill on Zyra. But here's the thing. Thresh dies dies during this, so overall it's just a 1-for-1 and Ashe got a kill. It could have been that much better had Mr. Gumayusi not limit tested the second minion wave. But what do we do after a gank like this happens and we want to stay in lane? Well, Ashe still has the minion surplus, and this is a big surplus. So Mr. Gumayusi's intention is correct. Trim the wave by auto-attacking and using your abilities, but what will make it even easier for you when you are in this situation, if there is a cannon minion, get rid of it before any other minion. Like, imagine if this one wasn't here. How easy would it be now to control this wave and potentially freeze it? Now, Mr. Gumayusi does something here that so many AD carries would not do. This cannon wave is bouncing back to the middle of the bot lane. Can you imagine how hard it would be to play this wave in this situation? No summoners, Thresh is still level 2, and Mr. Gumayusi has 900 gold to spend. So instead of staying in the bot lane where he would just be at the mercy of Ashe and Zyra, he recalls and does it as quickly as he can, so he still gets back to the lane to get the cannon minion. This move is very 5-head, but makes perfect sense. You don't really want to stay in lane if you are just resigning minion waves. Now, when we go back to the Draven game, look at the size of this wave pushing into Mr. Gumayusi. Similar situation. So if we want to thin out a wave, we do it by auto-attacking and using our abilities if we have to. But what minion do we take care of first? The cannon minion, that's it. Mr. Gumayusi is popping off. But when the enemy bot lane is still in lane, we can't relax. Blitzcrank has his hook available, and I know Mr. Gumayusi dodges it, but his positioning is so risky. And the simple reason for that is that he's standing in range of that threat. So in your games, to be 100% safe, stand diagonally opposite that main threat. This will still let you stay in contact with the wave, but you don't risk your life for it. But when the enemy support, for example, uses their key cooldown, now we can adjust our positioning because there is no reason to stand in Narnia if there is no threat. This is why Mr. Gumayusi aggressively moves up, but sometimes it will still be too risky to fight, and this is a prime example, when the enemy minion surplus is still gigantic. But this is a good thing and a bad thing. If you fight right away, it's bad, but if you can set up a freeze, it's better than good actually, it's great. So you can stand in a position that keeps the enemy range minions outside your tower's range, and all you have to do after that is wait for your minion wave to collide and mission accomplished. Freeze secured. All you have to do now is last hit like Mr. Gumayusi, and for Ashe and Blitzcrank, look at them. The lane is in such a risky position, and Ashe can't even run up to auto attack, it's that risky. She has to use her abilities to CS, and this creates opportunities for your teammates to make plays. Whether it's you and your support chasing the enemy bot lane down, whether it's your jungler ganking like Nidalee in this game, or a teleport behind your opponents, only good things can happen. Now, after a play like this, you can see these enemy minions here. Well, this wave should have collided with the frozen wave near Mr. Gumayusi's tower. So in this unique situation, the wave is actually going to reset, and because the enemy Ashe just died, we hard push every day of the week. This means Ashe will miss close to all of these minions, but Mr. Gumayusi decides to stay, which can be very risky. But so many AD carries would do this, and the only reason for staying here and getting tower plates in another wave is because you need that gold for a major item. That's it. If not, you recall immediately after hard pushing, so you are back in lane when your opponent gets back in lane. In this game though, it's well worth giving up a bit of tempo to get a 6-minute shield bow. And as you can see, Mr. Gumayusi misses a lot of the next minion wave because of this, but he has a mythic compared to Ashe's Noon Quiver. GG. But Chiz, what about if I'm the one with the massive minion surplus? Well, that's a great question. Well, in this case, the blue side heavily outnumbers the red side, and seeing as the wave is just past the equator of the rift, hard pushing as hard as possible is easily the best play. Now, Mr. Gumayusi doesn't do it, which is suboptimal, and the reason for this is that the next wave is not going to bounce back to the middle of the lane. It's going to get held up because we didn't crash our minions into the enemy tower quick enough. Now, in a game like this, where Mr. Gumayusi has like a 2k gold advantage already, it matters a lot less, but that's still not a reason not to make optimal plays. And the optimal play you can now make is to like the video, and we talked about positioning earlier in regards to the enemy bot lane's threat. Well, let's look at Mr. Gumayusi's perfect positioning in this Aphelios clip. When Zyra is holding the north side of the lane, he hugs the south side while staying in contact with the wave. When Zyra starts to swing to the south, Mr. Gumayusi moves north. Beautiful. This keeps her at arm's length, but Mr. Gumayusi takes his eyes off the ball for a second, doesn't see the Zyra move towards the middle of the lane and towards him, so instead of moving south and even away from this wave, he stands in the same spot and gets caught. Not lane ending, but do it again, and it will be. Now, if we fast forward to the next fight, this is going to show you how you can catch your opponents off guard when they are trying to pressure you under your tower. So as these minions are almost cleared, even though Thresh doesn't have his death sentence, Zyra is in a dangerous position, and Mr. Gumayusi roots her with his gravitum, but makes a big mistake in how he positions. Getting hit by this Zyra E is inevitable, but instead of running down towards the Zyra and away from Ashe, he runs down the middle of the lane, and this opens himself up to Ashe. It is clear that Zyra was the primary target here, so when you do want to tunnel vision an enemy champion like that, steer clear of the other enemy champion in the lane so you don't take a pointless amount of damage. This would probably have been a kill, and Mr. Gumayusi would be back in the game. Instead, because he got chunked, he surrenders control of the lane, and Ashe is able to build on a gold lead. This means that when they do 1v1 later, Mr. Gumayusi accuracy loses it because of this early game, and hopefully this video showed you the intricate details we must always think about if we're to be a top AD carry. If you want even more learning resources like champion guides and courses, make sure to check out the GameLeap website, links in the description and comment section, and until tomorrow's upload, this has been the